We'll call the board and start this meeting, and we can start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Ashley, could we have the roll call, please?
Chairman Sean Poole. Let the record show that Chairman Sean Poole is absent from today's meeting. Member Randy Stout.
Present.
Member Lori Simpson. Let the record show that Member Lori Simpson is absent from today's meeting. Member Joe Malin.
Present.
Alternate Member Denise McKenzie.
Present.
Alternate Member Michael Ferez.
Present.
City Attorney Nancy Meyer.
Here.
Okay. So we have a quorum, and we have the meetings from June 11, the minutes, and does anybody have any questions or want to approve those minutes? Everybody have a chance to look at them? Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I move we approve the minutes for the last week.
Second. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we have approved the minutes from June 11th. And now we're going to open up the comments from the general public.
Anybody say that? You can look here and see so no one signed
Oh,
up,
I'm sorry.
but you can still see if anybody wants to say anything.
Is anybody here from the wants to speak from the public? Oh, all right. No comments. Comments from the.
You have a question?
Do I talk when we're talking about with?
If it's about an agenda item, wait for that item to come up.
Okay. All right, and then comments from the chairs and members. I have no comments myself. Any members have a comment?
No, I'll wait until
Wait, anybody else? Okay. And we've already approved the board minutes. The agenda today, the first on the item is the draft of the community redevelopment plan. And
My understanding is it's within your packet is a draft of the plan that's been put together, and it's just being provided to you for that information. There's no discussion today or conversation. It's just informational. So it's yours to keep. Shall you read at night when you can't go to bed or something?
do we expect sometime in the future? I mean, this is something.
I don't know. Honestly, I'm not part of that agenda item, so I don't know what's coming. I imagine so, but I don't know that. But for today, it was just for information.
All right. Then, so the only remaining agenda item is a discussion on the open storage uses in commercial and industrial zoning districts.
Yes, so I am involved with that one, so I can give you a little bit more information. You have a proposed ordinance modifying the permitted uses in C3. There's a new number 23, which is open storage yard and lot, and it describes what would be allowed if you were to recommend this language to council. As always, this is just the first draft. We can change things, we can add things, we can modify, we can define more if you feel it necessary. The one thing that has come to my mind after drafting this and thinking about it, kind of looking at the other uses within C3 that we might want to talk about is within C3, you're allowed, businesses can do automotive repair. The repair work is supposed to be done in an enclosed building. They can, it doesn't talk about what they have to do with the cars that are waiting to be repaired. So ostensibly, they can be left in an unenclosed building or out on the property. The other thing I thought of is if you look at 23, part of the intent is to avoid any kind of junkyard or wrecking yards, and that specifically says it's not supposed to include a wrecking yard. When does a yard become a wrecking yard? If an automotive shop is able to keep cars out, not in an enclosed building while they're not working on them, how long can they sit there? What about a towing business where they tow a car and it sits in a lot Is there a time frame that they should be allowed to sit there? So that might be something more we need to talk about and address. But those are the only two things that I kind of thought, maybe there's a little bit more that needs to be done. So that all the provisions can work together. So I'll stop talking. You guys tell me what you think.
Well, my question along that line would be, is that addressed in the other zones, or
So this
so not addressed anywhere?
Yeah, it's not.
Okay.
It's not addressed. This kind of came about because there's really no clear definition of the different zones about what's allowed and not allowed for storage. There's some indoor storage. There's some outdoor storage. Nothing in C3 specifically said outdoor storage was allowed. That issue was brought to council, and they're definitely interested in allowing that. It's just the definition of what that means, and that's kind of what we're here to figure out today. The things I just mentioned didn't come from the conversation with council. It's just my reading of what's already there. You know, I'm always trying to figure out what doesn't go together, or where is there a disconnect that you might have a conflict within the things you're allowing. So that those particular things are not addressed anywhere else, to my knowledge, that I have seen yet.
Okay. So you don't think this draft is ready for approval at this point?
No, I think it's ready to have a conversation to see what the four of you think. If you have any other suggestions or questions about it, and then we can either come back if we need to. I'd like not to, if we can avoid it, if we can get some direction, and I can make any edits that you recommend, and then it can go to council for their consideration.
Anybody have questions?
I would ask whether or not we have, do we know if, does Pasco County have verbiage to cover what you were concerned about currently in their code? Because I know they have provisions for outside storage.
I did not specifically look for those
I'm just
on
wondering.
those two.
Because
It was just today that as I was reviewing this, it came to light, so I haven't had a chance to do that.
I think having some degree of having something that defines wrecking yard is probably critical, just because at this point and junkyard, like that, what constitutes that? I know county has some provision for in other zones for things have to be tagged. You can't have things parked outside that aren't currently licensed, and that's how they kind of prevent you from stacking up parts cars outside of a residence or outside of a building. It has to be a registered vehicle. But if you're dealing with a service lot, and it's a lot designated for that while it's not being inside the building, a garage being worked on, if it's a classic car, it may not be. I'm just thinking about, like, we've got some in Newport Richey down 19 that he's got a fenced yard behind the space. He works on the vehicles inside the building, but outside the building, they're stored while they're being in process. And it's not uncommon for, even like on Pine Hill where the hot rod shop is, not uncommon for them to have a client bring in the hot rod and 2 parts cars for them to take pieces off of to build, especially when you're dealing with classic vehicles. So I think we probably need to have at least some understanding of, I like what you said, Nancy, about the time frame is probably the easiest way to cover that like maybe it's an unregistered vehicles, because if they're registered vehicles, they're probably not junkyard status. That's how Pasco gets around it. If they're unregistered vehicles, then maybe there's a time frame that they can be in place in one of these storage spaces. But I don't know. It's just my thoughts. I don't know what you guys think.
I pulled up Pasco County, and so far there may be more than this one provision, but the first thing that comes up is that no person, firm, or corporation shall operate or maintain in Pasco County any junkyard, motor vehicle wrecking yard, or used car part business unless and until the same shall be enclosed by a fence, the construction of which will obscure the view thereof by the passing public. Said fence shall be of a height not less than 8 feet, and all the operations of such business shall be carried on and conducted within the enclosure of such fence. So what we have proposed for the city talks about having it fenced, except for ingress and egress, obviously. So that kind of captures that same idea, but it doesn't give any time frame or anything like that that I'm seeing.
That's up to including 8 people minimum.
Theirs is not less than 8. It would be 8 and up.
Well,
Or is this 6?
this draft says not less than 6.
Yes,
but I
that was
think-
Pasco. Pasco was 8, we had 6.
Right,
Okay.
but I think that if we're going to follow that, we should be not less than 8 also.
Would there be a way to reach out maybe to some current auto repair businesses that could be affected by this that, I think from their point of view, they may be able to explain the instance and how we could, deal with that to make it fit our goal of not having the junkyard and their goal of staying in business. I think they would have some insight on that as far as registering a vehicle or time frames or something like that. Time frame seems kind of hard to deal with.
Do we know do we already have something in the city charter on the police keep things impounded? When we have to pick something up and we have it record to here? Because I imagine there's probably a limit. We have a comment.
Now, you as chair get to tell him to wait until you ask for public comment, or you can let him stand up and talk now. It's up to you.
And just one moment.
But he might have the answer to the
All right,
question.
go ahead.
I know there's a time frame legally they have to retain them before they can impound them, to sell them, auction them, but I don't know anything more than that. So Mr. Mueller might.
Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. We historically see them showing up for auction after 90 days of holding. So that would be my thinking of that time frame. Thank you.
And I would venture to say most record yards are going to have, they're not interested in storing it longer than they have to by Florida law before they can pull salvage title on it and sell it or take it to auction. They don't want to store things forever. They will hold them until the law allows them to sell them.
I would imagine so. And that was my answer to your question. I wouldn't go to people in the business and necessarily ask their opinion if they want to come here and share that. Obviously, we welcome that all the time. I would work with a building official and see what he knows about that industry and how long they would normally retain something like that if we wanted to try to use a time frame.
Is C3 the only place that a tow service is allowed to be?
For Veronica. Yes.
Also, the actual towing business can be housed in C3, but the question of the wrecked vehicles is the issue. Are we going to allow them to sit there? How long are we allowing them to sit there? That's the issue.
But it would be just this. This is the only place in our ordinance. C3 would be the only place that we would be allowing this. We'd be attaching this to a record. That'd be the only zone that we currently have access for for tow service now. Can tow service be in any other zone?
Well, by code and by the interpretation of the building official, it should be in light industrial. But that's what you're all discussing, to open it up to C3, and then are you putting any constraints on it?
Is
Or
it currently allowed in industrial? Can they store wrecked vehicles in industrial now?
Yeah.
If I understand, that's what this proposal is, to add C3 to be able to do that kind of business. Maybe kind of a little technical question, but it says outdoor storage yards lot cannot be closer than 25 feet to any public street. What does that mean?
Can't be right up on the side of the road. They need to have a buffer between the road and the business.
What can't be by the road?
The
Lot?
Veronica might be a better answer about that. I would assume the fence would start. The fence couldn't be closer than 25 feet.
Buffering, and that's another question I had. So if you have a business that's C3 and they abuts residential, when you say 75 feet or any portion of the lot located within a residential district, it can't be closer than 75 feet. So that would assume to me, I would assume that the buffer has to start 75 feet in. So they have
Buffer
to.
where a vehicle may be, or fences?
Well, it would have to be a fence,
So it's not the lot then.
not the lot. No.
Right, the lot has to.
Yeah, the lot is there.
That's just kind of unclear to me. What does that mean?
I agree. I think That could be read that a lot that touches a public road, if the property lot touches a public road, you wouldn't be allowed to use it for that, as opposed to maybe it needs to be the portion of the lot used for storage. That way they create within a space, if you've got a 200 by 200 lot, property lot, the portion of it used for storage has to meet these buffer requirements. So if it was 200 by 200, but it abutted residential on one side and a public road on the front, then the section fenced off for storage would have to be at least 25 feet from the road and at least 75 feet from the residential space. So then maybe we do that with verbiage that just that simply says the outdoor storage yard must be located not closer than 25 feet from any public street or closer than 75 feet to any portion of the lot located. Right now, it kind of, by calling it the yard or lot, you kind of lean toward the word lot in there, I think, kind of leans toward the entire parcel.
In light industrial, it's actually worded a little bit different. It does say storage yard or lot. It's provided that such outdoor storage yard shall not be located closer than 25 feet to any public street or closer than 75 feet to any portion of a lot located in residential. So I think that makes the determination.
Makes the distinction.
Yeah, so we can track it's in light industrial, which I can change that.
What's the use case for?
I'm sorry. Why did council want to make the change? My understanding is if you go through the C3 area, there is outdoor storage, although the code doesn't allow for it. So I think it's the product they're trying to bring everything current, and that there's a belief that it's something that's wanted and needed within the community, that there's requests for more outdoor storage. So they're trying to control what is out there.
And where's in general?
That would be a question for Veronica, maybe can you kind of say where C3 is, where it would be located, those areas? I think it's 19.
19.
Yeah.
You have some Leo kit. I mean, it's sporadic. I can send you the zoning map.
I can look it up.
Yeah.
I think the conversations that we've had so far, I know there's some other areas, but most of it was on 19.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have a lot of light industrial space within the city, right? That's part of the problem too, is we have a lot of residents that want to have these businesses, but there's not really anywhere to put them. I think the verbiage change, for me at least, the verbiage change is the only thing. That way it's clear when someone comes into you that you can just go, no, that lot works, but here's the only place that you're allowed to put this, without someone arguing with it. And it would also, I think the way it's written now, it may preclude people from purchasing something because the lot looks like it abuts residential. So that lot wouldn't qualify the way that it is here. But I think the industrial verbiage makes it more clear that you can apportion a section of a given lot to do that.
Is that what we're trying to accomplish? Is cleaning up the language of the storage area, or are we trying to just add C3 to include storage?
We always want to improve language if we find a reason to do so. We want it to be clear to everybody that might be interested. So it's kind of double thing here. So like we said, it's now allowed in light industrial. Council's shown interest in allowing it in C3. Nothing in your code currently for C3 defines what that means. So we're trying to incorporate a definition within the C3 provision, so that's clear to everybody it's allowed here and this is what would be allowed. But as always, when I come up with language, I pull it from different places and try to put together what I think is being asked for. But you guys definitely get to give your input on that. So if you want to, like you have already, kind of change some of this wording because it would be more clear a different way, we definitely want that input.
Are we trying to clean up the language for industrial
No,
storage?
No, not unless someone recommends that we need to. That wasn't part of today's plan, but if you see something in there that's a concern, we obviously could have that conversation also. I will note now that looking back at the light industrial, to your point, it is 6 foot fence and light industrial also. So if we recommend 8 here, we're going to have to check the whole code for 8. So we might want to keep it 6 for consistency. But that's what they're already doing in light industrial, and all we're trying to do is capture that in C3. But if you guys preferred 8 foot or a different number than 6, that's definitely something that can be.
Well, my
discussed.
thought was 8 foot keeps it in line with the Pasco County Code, so
Right.
we can always tell them, say, no, it's 8 foot for Pasco, it's 8 foot for here, grandfather it in. So if a light industrial that has a 6 foot fence sells, just let them know now they need an 8 foot.
Well, that means we would also have to change the light industrial code. If that's something you're interested in, if you want the fence to be 8 foot, we're going to have to look at the other parts of the code that that would need to address if there's not a conflict. Which again,
I'm okay with 6 feet myself.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with 6 if that's what our industrial has been, so that that stays consistent.
Okay.
Just so that we don't force people that have been running in industrial for a long period of time to have to go in and change the fence again,
Okay.
if we
I can
can.
live with that, then 6 would be fine.
so it sounds to me like at this point, obviously we still need to have public comment, but at this point the corrections noted to make the language a little bit more clear in the C3 proposed language. And then I will work with the building official about definitions or more specific information regarding the wrecking yard, junkyard. So it's clear what that means and what people can and cannot and how long they, maybe not length. We'll talk about it if length is the proper way or something.
And like maybe the wrecking yard portion of that would have for not more than X days.
Yeah.
That way we could permit wrecking yards in that space if it's attached to a wrecker business and they're only being stored there long enough for them to get them through salvage title or impound. Because we're really not trying to block tow service guys from doing this in C3, right? We're trying to block a junkyard.
Right.
We don't want to scrap cars, but we're fine. It sounds like maybe everybody's okay with the idea of this being vehicles that are towed for impound or towed for short term until they're serviced or they're moved or insurance purposes. A lot of tow yards will pick them up and take them to their yard just until insurance picks them up to take them for repair. As long as we have a time frame in there, I think makes good
Any
sense.
more questions, comments?
Yeah. Okay, so it says junk automotive vehicles or secondhand automotive vehicle parts. And should that not also include junk boats? Because I've seen a lot of those out, and there's some boat junkyards in the Tampa Largo area. Okay. And let's see.
Were you looking at the Pasco?
No, those are in.
I
I mean,
think
what are you referring to?
the proposed language, the very end of
code
the
language.
very end of the proposed language right now.
Because remember, we're in Florida. People walk right up through the line and says, "Hey, it doesn't say you can't have a junk boat."
No, you're not wrong. Someone will absolutely take that and run with it. Maybe it's just we need to add, because we've got scrap or salvage operations for the processing, storage, or display of any sales of any scrap, salvage, or secondhand building materials, comma, junk automotive vehicles or secondhand automotive vehicle parts. And maybe we just need a line in there that's just vehicles in general.
Yeah, maybe something to the effect of anything that was previously sold as a motorized boat, automobile, RV. And then for like the sailboats and the tag-along RVs, that would be covered under the junk automotive vehicles, junk sailboats, junk tag-along RVs.
Okay.
Should we address grandfathering?
You can't take it away. I mean, you can't force people to. If you pass this new language, you can't say you have to now, right now, actively fix and come into compliance. If they have substantial damage or that use stops being used, then whomever takes over will have to comply. But you can't at this point make people that are there that are properly using it as it's written now do anything. Okay.
So they could continue to
Yeah.
bring in junk vehicles.
they will hopefully there's not too many junkyards in C3 because they're not allowed. But understand there is some storage out there. What's if they have a by right ability to do what they're doing, we can't make them change it. If they're doing something that's not in compliance and we go out and ask them to fix it, they need to come into compliance. So I don't want to speak to a specific location because I don't know that much detail about them. I know there are some out there, but if they have been allowed or permitted or agreed to by the city, there's not a lot we can do at this point. If they're out there and no one's really said yes, you can do that, we may have some remedy to move forward if we change the language. But the assuming everybody is currently compliant with what the code says now and we change it, we can't make those people change to come into compliance with the code now. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless there's damage or
Right.
changes hands.
Yes.
I think on the verbiage of that, it could be something along the lines of junk automotive / vessel / commercial parts. Like you could just, I think, encompass all of the things someone might drag into a spot and let grass grow around it. Just by, I think.
Good. Anything else?
Yeah, I do. The other thing that was not addressed in this is the vermin. I will speculate that the reason that they wanted to keep it all indoors is that if you got a rat or a cockroach problem, that was inside the building, the owners would take care of that. When it's outside the building and up against a residential area, what they don't see, they don't care about. And I know for a fact that a lot of rats and cockroaches live out in those junkyard type areas. So I don't see any protection for the residents, about the vermin. Okay, that's number one. Two, Michael said, well, when they do automotive restoration, they'll bring in 2 cars and the one they want fixed. Well, those 2 other cars have to be licensed at that point, because if they're not licensed vehicle. How does that run up against this code?
That's what I think we need some input from people in the business.
Well, that's why they're invited to come. They're invited to come here and give us their
Right.
input. and
So how do
comments.
they know? How do they know
It's
about it?
it's publicly noticed, so everyone knows, and
Okay.
we do have someone here that does want to speak. I don't think about the particular things we're discussing today, but she does want to give her comments. Working with staff, they will have information like that, and if they don't, they can get it. But we don't want to necessarily go out to a business owner and help that person and maybe lose sight of that we're trying to help the whole city. So you have to be careful of something like that.
And then one more thing, if these have to be licensed vehicles like repair shop. But I've heard Mike say several times that I can't go up on property and take a look. We can't see if they're registered or not.
Right.
How are we going to know that those are registered?
And so I think we're combining two different things that I brought to your attention. The outdoor storage yard is not going to be a junkyard. The junkyards are not allowed, right? It's going to be a storage yard, so someone can store an RV, they can store cars, right? They're not going to be in public view. Unless Mike's invited in, he has no way of knowing if it's a registered car or not. He can't see it, it's private property. That's true.
And that's my
That's-
point. If he can't see it,
Right.
he can't arbitrarily go in.
Right.
How do we know they're not turning a storage yard into a junkyard?
Sometimes you can't until you're invited in. Or you can see over the fence without, climbing over the fence when you can see it. So there are limitations. That's with any code, with any kind of code enforcement, you're going to have that issue. Now the automobile repair is allowed. That's already in the code. And that's one of the things I noticed. I was telling you as I was looking through this, we addressed that the work has to be done in the enclosed building, but doesn't talk about all the cars that are sitting there waiting to be worked on. That's a different provision to me than the outdoor storage, because they're not storing it. They're in theory waiting to work on it. It's just, and the way the code's written right now, it doesn't address how they can store those cars or how long they can be stored there. That might be a conversation for a different day, because it is different than the outdoor storage. Those are just the 2 things that came to my mind. Again, like I said, when I was reviewing this again this morning in preparation to come here today, I thought those might be 2 things that we need to address. I think I covered everything.
Can I So, anybody else from the board? Do we have anybody in the public? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Debbie Robinson, 8001 Apple 6 Drive, Port Richey, Apple 6 Commercial. That's my business. So I've been waiting for, we actually are a 3-family generation of Port Richey in our business here. And we are waiting now for several months now to move forward with our business. So what happened was Alex Place, the restaurant, has some land. And so they went ahead and changed their code to a different district. And then I guess they were in residential area. And then everything just, when we went to go and do our business, everything was to a stop because now they want to find out what the wording is. So when I went to the meeting on the C3, Veronica and Mike, they went all around the city and, and what they want to do is they're trying to clean Port Richey up. So they're trying to clean the marijuana and the gambling and the junk. So, and I don't blame them for that. And so, but we're in C3 and we have a building and we've had land for several years and it's just been sitting. So some people are putting junk on their land. My land is beautiful. And so I'm getting older. I got my land from my parents and then I'm going to put it down to my family and my grandson's already there. And Veronica's been to the building, Mike has been to the building, and we would like to split our land. So my son is going to get the building, and my sister's boy, who's sitting here, is going to get the land, and he would like to open up a very beautiful boat trailer storage. So we're going to have a beautiful rock with a fence and beautiful landscape outside. And if you see my building is very well kept. So it's not going to be a junkyard. It's not going to have motors. It's not going to have old boats. It's not going to have old cars. But we can't move forward because we're waiting on wording. So the only thing is that when I went to the meeting, actually he brought it up, and because when he said, where are all these, storage places, they're all mostly in C3. So there really was no problem with the wording at the time when all these people had these storage. So I think a lot of times they want to try to stop so many storages because of, and like I just was really shocked to find out about the attorney saying that, because I was going to mention when I go around the city, if we could just clean up the mess that's already been there, that, that's the problem, not the people that are coming in that are going to make Port Richey beautiful and nice. They've been taken advantage and they haven't been cleaned up. So I would really like to move forward with my business and my children but we've been waiting for months. So this is what I'm waiting on, the wording. So I'd like to move forward. Thank you so much.
I have a question for you. So I just want to understand, your property is currently C3, right?
I'm in C3.
And then according to the codes right now, and this is why we're talking about it, I guess, is that according to the code, you cannot use it as a storage.
No, so Michael came to our business and approved it and said that as long as we have like 5 covers, that we would be okay. But right now, everything got stopped because the wording with Alex Place Restaurant that actually went and changed his, he was what was he? He was C1, or he changed his zoning. And he was in residential, and so now they were saying that, the residents don't want to have, a storage right there in front with their residential. I don't blame them for that, but they stopped me from moving forward. And it's been months since we've been waiting. So I would like to move forward so that my kids could go ahead and move forward.
Well, I'm not that familiar with this code and everything, but so it sounds like it's not really something for us to be deciding, right?
Well, her issue is her issue, and that's being
Right.
addressed. What we're trying to do today is get this board's recommendation to council on the length, whether to separate outdoor storage in C3 and what language you want that to include. Council's interested in doing that. Doesn't mean you have to be, but they are. And the way that works is you guys get to have an opinion on that, and you have to make a recommendation. Obviously, there's some language here that you want some more clarification on, some additional wording. So that's going to have to be addressed, and it's going to have to come back to you one more time. Once it comes back to you, you will make your recommendation. It will go to council. Council will have to hear it at least twice for it to pass. So it's still going to be a process, but it is in the process.
So the city planner had stopped everything. So what happened is the council people are willing to go ahead with it, but they want to have like wording saying it's going to be nice, it's going to have this, it's going to have that, it's not going to have automotive stuff, and so that's what we're waiting on. And so we can't move forward. The city won't allow us to move forward until we get this wording. And it's been, 2 months already with the council, and now the council brought it to you guys, and now this is all going to go to the meeting next week for the city to finally make a decision.
Okay, so, thank you.
Thank you.
That's what we're working on right now.
Yes.
Can we make our recommendation to the
Well, you
council now? Or?
you can, but here's the catch. Based on our conversation, I can change the language about the lot and make sure it's clear with the buffers and all that, how that's going to work. That's going to be an easy fix. It's going to track just like what light industrial says. That's easy. So you can see what that will look like. Changing the last provision of the proposed language to include vessels and boats and all those things, I'll come up with some generic words that try to capture all those things. So that doesn't necessarily have to come back to you if you're in agreement with consensus-wise doing that. The issue we have now is addressing the wrecking yard, junkyard, attaching it to, they can do it if it's attached to a towing service or not. That is completely new language. It's going to have to be drafted. And the proper way to do that is to bring that back to you, let you see what's being proposed by me for you to then recommend to council to approve it or not approve it. Right now, what you could make a motion right now to not recommend this if you don't like it. And it'll go to council as it is and say, we don't like it. You can make a motion to council right now saying, we recommend you accept this with these changes. And then just trust me on the language, or show up at the council meeting and say, that's not the language we meant. Okay. Or you can recommend as it's written and let it move forward. Or you can have it come back one more time with the additional language. And it does take time. It's a process. Nothing's quick, but those are the options you have. And I think you have some more public comment. So you need to.
Any more public?
Yep. There's that man, his arm always goes up out there.
Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. This whole thing started because of an interpretation on item 22, warehousing and general storage establishment. In the past, I believe that they considered general storage and allowed it in a C3 under that provision. And then there was an interpretation of our current building official, I believe, that they define that as, well, that's not really what that means. And if I look at this, item number 22, general storage establishment is not a defined term, so it's vague. If it was caps, it would have been a defined term in this section of law, I guess, our city code. But the purpose of this is since there was a large number of C3 doing open storage, the question came up at council, say, hey, should we redefine that? That's where it landed back in your lap. And this language in 23 is an attempt to, okay, maybe outdoor storage, we need to define it and add it to this. So that's kind of the background of what happened and why it's sitting in your lap. And I think you guys got some good points there, especially to expand the definition as to what makes up a wrecking yard, which that needs to be a defined term in this as well as adding RVs and boats and those kinds of things, because the city lacks that, and that's probably the largest violation of code enforcement is boats and trailers and stuff. So people need a place to park their things because they can't park them in their yards or they'll get a citation. So that's what I know in the background. Hopefully that helps you guys come to this decision. We're trying to make it easy, not difficult, and make it enforceable and not based on anybody's whim or interpretation. So good luck.
Thank you. Any other comments?
My question would be, at this point, this removes junkyards and wrecker service and all that stuff from C3.
Yes.
It's already allowed in industrial, right? Wrecker service and all of that. Do
Yeah.
we have people that are requesting to put tow service and wrecker service in C3?
Yes.
Okay, and that's what council is council.
The conversation with council, of course, you just heard from one of them, was not about a specific person or service or entity. It was just, this is what's already there. There was interpretations by different building officials finding different things could belong there. So we're trying to make it clear.
Okay. So my question would be, I wasn't here when you guys came up with this came up with this verbiage. But obviously at some point someone decided we didn't want wrecker yards or any of those things in this space.
Right.
I don't have a problem with this going in with the small changes that we want to do now, which excludes wrecker service from C3. And then if we want to do more of a study later or have the building official come back to us at some point to add a provision for tow service and define it, like specific separating it from junkyards,
Right.
Then that could be 25 on this list later on. That way this could move forward and council could go ahead and get moving on what is current business for trying to get some storage set up and some things like that set up that is not wrecker service and not junkyards.
Right.
And we could come back and add more clearly defined tow yards for the express purpose of not junkyard. We could define that as a separate additional use in C3 later at a different time. That could be something that we could do without this, because this is that whole, when you see some stuff come up for vote and it's got oil rigs and oil drilling and daycares.
Yeah.
And like, it doesn't all have to be in one provision. I think we can do it in one. This clearly to me defines a use case for storage facilities and how to properly put them into this space. And we don't want a junkyard in that space, and this clearly takes care of that. If we also need to do something with towing, that doesn't have to be in provision 2023.
Okay.
Provision.
Would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
Am I allowed to?
Yes, you're an active person today because you're sitting in. So a motion would need to be something like you move to recommend to council to adopt the proposed language with the conditions that you have stated, but since you kind of changed them, you kind of need to list out what those conditions are in your motion. And I'll help you. Let's go. You can do it.
Well, I was saying I could take a note.
Just repeat what you said.
All right, so I move that we propose to council the verbiage as written with conditional changes for definition of yard, not the overall lot, and to add vessels, recreational vehicles, and commercial vehicles to the list of non-approved items to be stored.
Is there a second? All right. I hear.
I'm sorry, one more time. Just make sure there's no more public comment. We didn't close public comment.
Okay.
Just make sure.
Any more public comment?
Oh, there's
before we
more.
vote?
Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. Did I hear you say that to not include recreational vehicles?
It's the section at the bottom that we're making that change on is that you cannot have scrap, salvage, or second-hand automotive vehicles, but we're adding
RVs and all that other stuff.
so that we're not having scrap yards for any of those.
Right, right. But in the top section here, it's allowing, let me read it. Primary use is storage of items and outdoors. This can include vehicles such as trucks, trailers, and RVs.
Right.
Probably need to add boat there. RVs, recreational vehicle, a boat could be defined as an RV, but you have to have a defined term to state that. And mentioning something about a towing service. This would include a towing service to allow them to store the vehicles that they've towed there for a particular period of time. You were talking about that as well, right?
So we've backed away from that item
Okay.
so that this would not allow for that in C3, and we would have to
But that's
another provision later.
But that's what's going on. That's what kind of precipitated this thing. There was a towing company. There's towing companies in the city right now that have storage, outdoor storage. And then there's other towing companies that want to come in that are in a C3. This guy's in a C3. And somebody made an interpretation a while back saying, yes, it's allowed. And now our new building official or current building official said, no, it's not. So what we're trying to do is with this is, what do you want it to be? We already got this hodgepodge of stuff. We wanted to make it kind of uniform across the city rather than to have pockets of, interpretation, right? So the interpretation is that's not a wrecking yard. That's a storage lot where he's storing vehicles until they can either claim them or sell them, right? Just like we have here on this property. We have a storage yard. I think our property is zone C3, and we're doing the exact same thing. So if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. So that's all my thoughts are. Thanks.
So just so you're aware, in light industrial zoning district, the outdoor storage, this provision does not permit wrecking yards either, junk yards, scrap, salvage, for processing, storage, display, or any of that either.
But we're not talking about that.
You had mentioned something about that earlier, so I just want to clarify that that's also in the light industrial zoning.
Right now, we have no provision anywhere.
Right, so we're have a motion in a second, so we're gonna have to vote on it at some point.
Yes.
But your motion was in part not to ignore the wrecking yard issue, but to move this part forward, and then we can address wrecking yards on August 1st or whenever we come back in that time. If you don't want to do that, you can withdraw your motion, and we can talk more about wrecking yards. But I think at this point, if we want to address wrecking yards specifically, based on what you guys have indicated, you need more information, which means nothing will happen today.
Right. So I would stick with the motion the way I have it stated now. I do like the adding boats in that upper portion, although that is just the such as in large items. Someone would have interpreted that as well. But I would, again, I continue. I stand on my motion that this lets this move forward. We can still, after this, talk about pulling together the tow truck piece. But if we stop right now to have her have to go back and rewrite this entire thing for wrecking yards, then none of the other stuff can move forward until we do that.
You're not going to withdraw his motion, then we need to have a vote on the motion.
I'm not clear on your motion now.
Okay.
I think
You want
if I could ask you, can I ask them to
yeah, you
reword
can
it?
ask him to
If-
summarize it for you.
I
You don't
think
have to
we
do it.
can offer to approve the C3 portion of it, just saying, 'cause that seems to be the main thrust of this, is to include C3 into this storage language, and then maybe with the provision that we can add more details to what's allowed and what's not allowed.
Well, the motion is that the underlined language in your packet on, I don't have a packet, so I don't know what page it is. Flip to your next page. Okay, go to page 140. Keep going. There we go. It starts right here. So it starts right here. This underlined language is the new language that would be added to the C3 district. So the motion is to add that language with the few things we've talked about, adding boats to the what is allowed, and then expanding that last sentence about what cannot be scrapped. Include more than just automobiles. And then clarifying that the buffer the yard, not the lot itself, which would make it consistent with light industrial. So that's the motion. The wrecking yard aspect that we got into would be addressed a different day. Because if we want to include that now, this is not going to be able to move forward today. Does that make sense?
Can we do it? Okay.
Yep.
So
And that's
somebody
what
summarizing
no,
it?
that's
Yeah.
no, you're good. That's the motion.
Okay.
That's what that was what was seconded.
Okay, second. All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Any opposed? No opposed.
All right, so I will add the additional language. This will go to council, and I will ask the city manager to add wrecking yards to your next agenda, so we can clarify that and get that figured out.
Do we have any other items on the agenda? Is there any old business we need to discuss? No?
I think the only other thing you and I discussed briefly before we started, you are now down one member. She is now on council. So it was requested that maybe at the next meeting, August 1st, that anyone interested in a permanent position, maybe one of our alternates, maybe someone else, clerk know, and we will address that on August 1st. So you have your full board again. I think I covered what we talked about.
All right.
Yeah.
Do I need to repeat that, or you?
Nope.
Okay.
Good.
So anyways, so there is an opening in the, as a permanent seat on the board if anybody's interested in that. That'll be made, that's available to the public in addition to alternates. Any other items? Is there a motion to adjourn this?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. The ayes have it for adjournment.
Does anyone object?
Any objections? Okay. Thank you all very much for coming.